great place to practice feeling good, you know,
Absolutely.
because that sunshine's good. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, and we got a lot of sunshine going on right now, so
Right on.
it's good. Well, man, I want to begin our conversation with living through this pandemic. It really shifted and altered all of us and everybody personally. How did
hmm
you get through that time period, and how did it subsequently change the way that you approach the practice of feeling good and overall?
Yeah, I think it highlighted for me, my family, my friends, most people I know that we all have a need for connection, and it's greater than we ever thought. And we sometimes that is highlighted or amplified in the absence of it. And so for me, yeah, it was all about connecting. And you know, Zoom, the whole thing about Zoom came about because of that pandemic, right? It came this phenomenon globally because of the lockdown. And so it actually gave me time to rethink my business, retool my business, and get really dialed in. And it was because of that that I was able to shift to an online business model, which has actually served me really, really well. And but also just getting creative about connecting with people and uh, being more intentional. And that's what came out of it for me.
I don't think I've heard anybody say it's been a bad thing that we did go to this virtual setting. I think it's opened up a plethora of doors. And before this pandemic happened, I think there was a notion that everything had to be done in person, especially telehealth. Like, there's just like my son's on the spectrum, and there was a lot of meetings where he didn't need to be there the whole time. So it was just so much easier to do it remotely. And then
hmm
I carry on with the meeting and all of that. So it's a good thing, that's for sure. But it's ironic how connected we were digitally, but we did need that human connection.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So there's different kinds of connection, right? Different ways to get that need met. But I think it just, again, it highlighted that it actually is a need, not just a want. It's a need. And if that need goes unmet, we start to get squirrely.
Yeah, we certainly do. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. You got a lot of things that are going on in the practice of feeling good as a speaker, a coach, and an author. But if I was to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders, career day, one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yeah. What I would tell them is what I tell adults. What I get to do is I get to work with people and help them change the way they think. And as a result of them changing the way they think, they have access to producing new and different results in the areas of their lives, specifically their health, their wealth, and their relationships. And because we all learn stuff, but one of the things we don't learn in grade school and in junior high and high school is how we think, how to think. We're taught to think, but we're not really taught how does the brain begin, how does it put together thoughts? How does it, why, and how do those thoughts impact our actions, which therefore impact our results?
How hard is it overall to change an adult's mind?
Well, um, some people would say it's really challenging. I would say it depends on the person and how practiced they are at resisting life. So, and their need for certainty. The greater level of uncertainty that a person can deal with, the easier it is for them to navigate and make changes in their life. If you're somebody who really clings to certainty, needs a high level of certainty, it's going to be challenging. Um, but but it is relatively straightforward methodology and simple, right? And I think one of the greatest examples is this, like this phone I'm holding in my hand, the iPhone. The technology that we are now using on a daily basis, you and me, we didn't have any of this growing up. So if we had a glimpse of it when we were young, it might have looked really intimidating. Like, oh, gosh, I can't learn how to use all that technology. I don't understand that. And yet here we are using it because we have so much practice with it. It's all about the practice, like I said to you before we started recording. It's heavy emphasis on the word practice.
It's interesting because I hear a lot of people, like I work in technology by day, and I hear a lot of people that are like, I just can't do it. I don't do technology. They just dismiss it. And I think it could be for anything. I just don't do high fructose drinks. I don't do sushi. Like you get yourself convinced that you can't do it, that you automatically exclude yourself before you even try it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're practiced at judging whether we can or can't do something frequently before we've even tried something, right?
Yeah.
Because we're acting out of our programming. Again, just like this phone has an operating system, and that operating system runs the device. All right. It's the apps are that operating system allows those apps to run and produce very specific results. However, and I should say, and we upgrade this operating system frequently, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we get a little notification that says, "Hey, it's time to upgrade your iOS. Plug it in. It'll upgrade this tonight." But when is the last time that we intentionally sat down and said, "I'm going to upgrade the operating system between my ears"? Like literally upgrade it. Like get curious about, do these programs that are running in my head, do they serve me or do they hinder me?
Yeah.
Right? Is it time to delete some of those and begin to create some other applications that will produce the desired results?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Take me back to where you're born and raised and how these seeds got into you to get into psychology, to get into helping people understand how to think. How did all of the beginnings of this evolve into who you are today?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, in our elementary school, we had a public speaker who came. He was a motivational, inspirational speaker. And I don't remember what his lesson was about necessarily, but I do remember he was engaging. He had red hair, and he gave every single person in the gymnasium as they were walking out after his delivery, he gave every single person a little reflective sticker, and I put that reflective sticker on the metal headboard of my bed in my room, and I saw it all the way through growing up, so all the way through high school. And that sticker said, "Start your day with PMA, positive mental attitude." And the other thing it said on there is, "Expect something wonderful to happen." That gentleman placed a seed in my mind that began to blossom. In sixth grade, I was reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. And so I was a bit of an odd kid, right? So I've just always had this bent, and I'll bring it full circle. That hunger for personal development helped me eventually launch my own podcast. And I'm not doing it any longer, but uh, during that podcast, I was able to find the gentleman who spoke at my elementary school.
Cool.
Yeah, and I had him on my show, and it was so cool to
Wow.
like say, "Hey, Wayne, you made a big impact in my life." And he's in his 80s now, and I sent him a copy of my book, and he was just like, that was one of the best things that he's ever experienced.
Of course. I remember watching that documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there was a part in there where he hung up this picture of a bodybuilder. Did you see that?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, and he looked at it all the time, and he ended up overtaking him. I mean, his was a little bit more there. It was just like, wow, he got to meet him, but then he got to overtake him. So
yeah,
it is there is a level of reinforcement, which is the idea behind advertising. It's not that you don't know what Coke and McDonald's and Starbucks is. It's that repetition gets jammed so far into your subliminal like thought process that it just
exactly.
brims up. Like if you're on the road and you're like, where are we going to go? Oh, well, we know there's one of those, and that's it. It's that easy, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, repetition, right? I think Tony Robbins says like repetition is the mother of skill. Yeah, repetition, repetition. It's all about the practice. We just want to become more intentional about what we're practicing. Are we practicing impatience, or are we practicing being present? Are we practicing upset and anger, or are we practicing kindness? Right? I mean, we really we have to understand that we're always practicing. So what we want to do is become intentional about the practice and get curious about, are the things I'm practicing, do they serve me or are they hindering me?
The interesting thing about what you're talking about is it's kind of like that 90-day notion of training your brain to get into a new habit. I think as human beings, until we go through something that we really have to overcome, I don't think we know what that feeling's like. I know early on for me, it was running. I was really small in high school. I was 4'11", so the only thing I could do was run. You know, running from my shadow, so to speak. I couldn't play baseball. I just wasn't an athlete, but I remember the amount of endorphins and how much I had to overcome to try to get close to people that were 6'3" and six whatever, because I was this
Yeah.
little guy. I had to move differently, but I had to push and go through the pain. But I think about even quitting smoking. Ironically, you know, even being a runner, I smoked and I had to get over that, and that was excruciating. But I think those my point is, I think with human beings, it's one thing to say it to them, but until you get forced into that corner where you literally
Hmm.
have to look your biology in the eyeballs, I don't know that people like, I don't know. There's a part of us that won't do it until we're uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. When the pain is sufficient, we'll take action, right? Or if there's a large enough enticement, if there's a large enough treasure or reward on the other side. But it's usually we wait until the pain is sufficient. So part of the practice really is learning how to take action um outside of waiting for that pain to become sufficient. Like what would it look like to begin to take action based on because I said I'm going to take action, like being the power of being your word. That's another practice, right? The power of being our word, keeping our word to others, but more importantly, to ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's a huge practice. It's really our brain's always running, it's always thinking, and it's always operating without our permission, consent, or approval. What we want to really understand is that we can influence our thinking. We can change our thinking. And if we want to do better, we have to change our thinking because most people say, like, gosh, I want to do better, Fletcher. I'm going to do better next time. Or, I mean, I've said this, I'll do better next time. Or I know I can do better. And then I set out to do better, but I set out with the exact same beliefs, decisions, and attitudes and emotions that I tried to do better with last time and the time before. There must be something different in our thinking in order to accomplish this thing called better. And what that is new thinking. And I mean, when I mean say new thinking, what I mean is new neural pathways, rearranging the circuitry of your brain so that you have access to producing different outcomes. Because if you don't have a new program in there, your brain can only use the existing program that has produced these specific results.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been kind of an inspiration for your work?
Yeah. Obviously Tony Robbins for sure, Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar, like uh Proctor, Oprah Winfrey, Brene Brown, like all these wonderful giants. And I'm just fortunate because I get to stand on their shoulders and benefit from all their teachings. So and also my mother, who modeled extreme kindness. Mother Teresa, again, extreme kindness. Nelson Mandela. I heard you. I think you were talking about Nelson Mandela with one of your previous guests that I listened to. And all these people who have gone through it, who have been tested by fire, right, and gone through the trials and emerged a victor. Their stories are inspiring. Yeah, people with inspiring stories and who are willing to share them, that is such valuable content for the rest of the world.
Yeah, it really elongates humanity. It makes us feel like there's a purpose. Because I think sometimes you get mired in the idea of what's going on here in this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And you bring up a good thing, purpose. Like a lot of times people don't know what their purpose is, or they feel like I have to find out what my purpose is. Well, the good news is we can simply declare it.
yeah.
We don't have to travel the globe and try to in search of our purpose. We can declare what our purpose is, right? It doesn't have to be some grand thing of curing cancer. That'd be wonderful, but it could just simply to be a source of kindness and contribution wherever I am. You know, what an exciting purpose that is.
You know, it's interesting. They always say that the things that are the most important are usually right in front of you. And I think I think it can be trivial for some people, but it's really true. Like, you know, there is that notion of claiming what your destiny is, but there's also that notion that you can't force love. You can't force finding and falling in love. It just has to kind of happen. But at the same time, there are things that are kind of they're in front of you. The smoke has started, you know, before the
Yes.
fire is ignited. Sometimes it's right in front of you and you just have to slow down, which I think is kind of what COVID did for people. It slowed this pace of our reality down and gave us that clarity to find what we need.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So, so let me ask you this. If you could meet anybody out there, whether in your line of work or otherwise, that you find totally fascinating or inspiring, who would it be?
Hmm.
Who'd you love to meet and talk to?
I'd love to talk with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Um, for me, that whether you agree with what he did or not, I find him and his wife fascinating. Their story, if you know if you've taken the time to read about it, is inspiring. It's unique, um, and I I feel like what he was, someone who plays at that level, boy, that is so different than my life. And I would love to be able to sit down and have some candid conversations and ask some questions about what it's like to play at that level. Because we're talking about intention, being intentional, being present to your life. That's that's a position where you just can't be running on autopilot. You
Yeah.
have to be engaged, right?
Yeah.
I think
It's
that'd be fascinating.
it would be fascinating, and I would love to join you in that. And that's one of the reasons why I've even asked this question, because I've wondered myself, and he's on the top of my list. And I think the thing that gets me about him, with everything that's been going on politically, is that politicians are really mean people. They just aren't nice. And we see a mask all the time. And
Mm,
I think with him, I think there's a part of him that has to cut to the quick, and maybe people think he's been short, but I don't think he's mean. I do think there's a lot of them out there that are mean. And I think when we see comments and we see the way that they roll and the way that they generally are, I think it's just very evident. Other people are better at hiding it, but I think Barack is the kind of guy at the end of the day that people would say he's a nice guy.
yeah, sure. He sure comes across that way.
That's my thought. I
Yeah,
just, I've seen enough interviews, I've seen enough things, and I've done this long enough where I can read pretty quick. And I
yeah,
just have this sense that even when he's off script, there's a part of him that's just kind of there's a part of him that has the little kid that just comes out when no one's around. And when the camera rolls, you see it. It's true. But I mean, that's not saying that everybody's perfect and he's this glowing saint. But I think there's a
sure.
part of him that's just not mean. He doesn't go after things in a mean way. And I think about that debate, that town hall they had, where even with McCain being in the room, they were trying to falsify something that Barack did, and he came into their defense. That whole thing's gone politically now. It's just a lot of mean mud tossing, and it's just really shows that maybe we didn't learn what we needed to learn in kindergarten.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned like you've been doing this long enough. Yeah, I looked up how many episodes you've got, like closing in on like 1,700 or something, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
it's up there.
lot of
Yeah.
episodes. Congratulations on the
Well,
success of your show.
thank you. Yeah, and it all started with jazz radio, and jazz people. I think they've taught me to recognize and to embrace humility and being nice. They're the nicest people in the world, man. Like, the most talented people are the most grounded people. It's like when this whole experiment of human beings becoming who we are was hatched, there's a secret that was in the middle of that fortune cookie that said, "Follow the jazz musicians."
That's great. I love it.
So it's good. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up, you obviously have to give a lot. We've talked about, someone like Barack having to be on all the time. You can't have an off
Hmm.
button. You're always on. You have to do that for your clients. You have to also be the embodiment of that spirit that you're trying to imbue in others. How do you do that? How do you maintain that motivation and to help them and to also evolve yourself?
Great question. So one of the things that I've done, Joe, is I've really defined who I am. And knowing who I am is makes it so much easier to play this game. So, I wear a lot of hats and different roles. I'm a father. I'm a coach. I'm a magician. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. I'm an athlete. Those are all roles that I play. But who I am at the core of everything is I'm a clearing for people to feel safe, heard, and empowered. And that's who Fletcher Ellingson is. He's a clearing. So, which means if you get in his sphere, you're going to feel safe, heard, and empowered. I don't know about what you're going to feel empowered about, but that's up to you. But that's who I am. So if you get around me, that will be the result. Knowing who I am, having clarity about that, it helps me keep in alignment with my desired outcomes. Um, and so it's so getting up in the morning. What gets me up in the morning is knowing that I'm going to be able to interface with people and witness transformation in their life. And for me, when I get a witness transformation, that's the most exciting thing to me. Like, I mean, I'm such a nerd about transformation, right? Not just changing. I mean, transforming an area of your life. Because if you can change something, you can change it back. I'm talking about actual transformation where you get to see something in your life that you didn't know was there. And now that you see it, now that it's out of your blind spot and in your vision, you get to address it. You get to determine, does this serve me or does it hold me back? And if it serves me, great. But if it doesn't, we get to do something about it. And that is an exciting line of work to be in.
So you've obviously had to walk through heavy stuff in your life, and as a professional, you've had to grow a lot. What would you consider a period of your career where you really felt like you figured out what you needed to do? This is what your calling is. What happened? What was the moment? What was the time frame? Was there something like that for you?
Yeah, it was probably around when I lost my business. I've started several different businesses, but and one of them crashed and burned hard. It was a manufacturing business, and we loved it. But we had some partners that we didn't gel with. I was definitely missing some business sense, but we lost everything. And I mean, from one day to the next, it was like black and white. We had a business, the next day we didn't. We walked away with it. I had five. We had a family of five, a mortgage, and now is zero income and over $20,000 of credit card debt. Not the good kind of debt to have, right? So at that moment, oh, and then we had to get on food stamps, right? I mean, we literally it was just a very low point in my life and very depressed. And what happened out of that was a new story emerged for myself. And that story was so powerful that it launched me into massive action, just absolutely massive action. And so the what happened was a new story emerged that was in such contrast to my previous one that it was like this a new epiphany, and that I had to get in action with it. And as a result of that, we spun up a new business that became wildly successful, which led me into my current coaching career because I was dealing with thousands of people on a regular basis. So, and I would begin to notice that, oh, there are patterns to people's problems. There's not a lot of uniqueness to them. There are patterns, and it's very easy to recognize them. So if these are predictable problems, the solutions are going to therefore be predictable. But yeah, it was that reaching rock bottom in order to cobble together a new empowering story.
So let me ask you this. What's the best advice you've ever gotten? You have to help people, you have to guide them. What's been the guiding light for you?
Yeah, the guiding light for me is that life is always working out for my greatest evolution. I didn't say it's always working out the way I want it to work out, okay? But it's working out for my greatest evolution, meaning that if I actually am present to the lessons in my life, I become stronger, I become more compassionate, I become kinder, I become more knowledgeable, wiser, right? I become more resourceful, capable, and flexible. Life's always working out for my greatest evolution.
So, of all of these things that you've touched on, that you've evolved and gone through and become at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Yeah, boy, that's a good one. I think what I'm proudest of is the work I've done around ego, that I have diminished the role of ego. I'm still very self-centered. I believe we all are.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it got in my way of growth. You got being closed off and righteous didn't serve me. Being open and curious, that those are some ways of being that definitely serve me and allow for growth. The way I used to think was small-minded. And so I think what I'm proud of is the work I've done on me personally in order to shift my psychology, which allowed for creating a really feel-good life.
So at the end of the day, you touched on this a little bit too. Everyone out there has a perception of you in all these different circles that you help people and your family and friends, everybody around you. But ultimately, you guide the ego, id, and superego. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah. Uh, I like to think of myself as a conduit for transformation. I just I am that person that if you get around me, something's going to transform in your life because who I am is a clearing for people to feel safe, heard, and empowered. So I'm this conduit for transformation. That's who I am. For so many years I was like, who am I? What's my purpose? And then I was like, how about if I just decide who I am and what my purpose is and begin playing that game?
Yeah.
And so what I want people to know is it's never too late to change the game. You can decide who you want to be and what your purpose is. You get to decide what game you want to play.
It's interesting when that movie Wedding Crashers came out. I remember my 20s. I had a roommate and we were in the city, single guys, and we try to figure out what to do. And at one point I was working for an architectural engineering firm and there was the Union Station in Kansas City got redone and they were going to have this big Motown band, all this fancy stuff going on, like upper crust stuff that we weren't anywhere near. And we were like, let's put on our finest clothes and go down and see what we can do. And we went in and noticed that everybody got a little rubber ring that like went off. So we just put our hand in our pocket. I was working for an architectural company, so I just acted like I belonged. And we kind of we got in and we were both like, oh my God, we're eating like crab legs and having gin and tonics. There's a Motown band. But I think the point is, I'm not telling people to go out and crash things and do things illegally. But I think if you act like you belong, and I just told my stepdaughter this yesterday. She went to Nashville, and we were just talking about how you live and carry yourself. If you act like you belong, like you taking care of your destiny, then you'll fit right in. You just got to believe
Absolutely.
you do it.
Yeah, yeah. Believe it. Yeah, feel and a belief is just a sense of certainty, right? So we want to get to that point where we feel certain that we belong, that I can be here, that I can play at this level or whatever it is you want to accomplish. Like that's possible for me. That's accessible for me. I have what it takes. All that I need is within me.
Yeah,
So yeah, feeling certain.
yeah. I got to tell you, coming from jazz radio, when I saw your name, and I'm thinking Fletcher Henderson and Duke Ellington, you got the perfect jazz stage name, dude.
Unfortunately, I don't play any instruments well enough to do that, but yeah, that'd be fun. I love music.
But if you ever decide to play one on TV, you got the perfect stage name. Perfect. Man, this has been great. Hey, if anyone wants to reach out, hire you, get your book, anybody wants to get indulge in your world, where do they go?
Sure. Go to FletcherEllingson.com or thepracticeoffeelinggood.com. Either one will take you there. And you can grab a copy of my book, The Practice of Feeling Good, How to Upgrade Your Thinking and Live a Feel-Good Life. Grab it on Amazon. And if you want to get one from me, for any of your listeners, or for one of your listeners, I should say, if they're hearing this and they want to get a free signed copy, email me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com and reference Joe Dimino, famous interviews, and I'll send them a free copy in the mail.
I love it. This has been wonderful. I can tell you I felt good this whole time. Proof of the pudding. Thank you, sir. Keep
Thank
doing the
you.
great work.
Right on.
Take care, man.